Red roof is coming.
Get ready.
This is the time to continue to remain in your safe places.
Hurricane season is coming.
There's no such thing as just a Category 1.
From expert forecasts,
the Florida Panhandle looks very high probability for possible impacts.
to safety tips. What to do when a storm is heading your way.
You need to really get those materials that will allow you to survive hurricanes.
We'll keep you prepared so you can stay safe.
We have experts that are looking at everything from what the hurricane season is likely to produce months in advance.
An AccuWeather special presentation.
Hello and welcome to our special AccuWeather presentation, Hurricane Center 2022. I'm Rotella.
And I'm Adam Del Rosso. Throughout the next hour, we'll take a look at what to expect for this year's hurricane season. Our expert meteorologists work months in advance using AccuWeather's exclusive iPath, real impact scale for hurricanes, as well as many other resources.
We'll tell you what we're forecasting for this hurricane season, including how many hurricanes and tropical storms to expect and where they might occur. We'll introduce you to a group of pilots that fly directly into the eye of these storms. They're known as hurricane hunters, and we'll meet them. We'll also visit some areas hard hit by last year's storms and share tips on how to best prepare if a storm is headed your way.
Over the next 60 minutes, we'll be joined by special guests, including our own Dan Kottlowski, senior meteorologist and hurricane expert here at AccuWeather. We'll also hear from the director of the National Hurricane Center, Ken Graham. We've got lots to cover, so let's get started.
First, let's go to AccuWeather's Marvin Gomez with a recap of the storms we saw during the 2021 season.
Before the start of the hurricane season, Tropical Storm Anna developed in the Atlantic Basin. Once the season officially began in June, Tropical Storm Bill formed off the coast of the Carolinas. Claudette came ashore in Louisiana on June 19th and produced substantial flash flooding that led to 4 fatalities in Alabama. In July, Elsa became the first hurricane of the season, impacting the East Coast as a tropical storm and causing an estimated $1 billion in damage. On August 16th, Fred made landfall in Florida as a tropical storm. It produced catastrophic flooding in the southern Appalachian Mountains and took the lives of 6 people in North Carolina. Henri made landfall as a tropical storm in Rhode Island, producing extensive flooding. Damage costs are estimated at $700 million. Major Hurricane Ida caused catastrophic damage in Louisiana in late August. As it moved northeast, Ida resulted in deadly flooding in the New York City metropolitan area and northern New Jersey. Larry became the 3rd major hurricane of the season, impacting Newfoundland, Canada later that week. Florida's 3rd landfall for the season occurred with Tropical Storm Mindy on September 9th. Short-lived Hurricane Nicholas moved onshore the Texas coast on September 14th. Its heaviest rains fell throughout the central Gulf Coast states. In total, 21 tropical cyclones formed, including Kate, Julian, Odette, Rose, Teresa, Victor, Wanda, and Sam, which stayed a major hurricane for over a week.
Marvin, thank you. Each year, AccuWeather's team of experts deliver our annual hurricane season forecast. One of those experts is senior meteorologist and lead hurricane forecaster Dan Kottlowski, who spoke to our Monica Danielle about how the forecast is developed and what he looks for each year.
I've been doing this for 45 years, so forecasting weather and looking at the tropics all my life. So this is something I take seriously.
Most people are familiar with the yearly hurricane forecast. What they may not realize is the science that goes on behind the scenes. AccuWeather hurricane expert Dan Kottlowski says it all begins with whether or not there will be an El Nino or a La Nina event.
Two variables that we really try to hone in on as we go through the spring and during the early part of the season is the state of whether we're going to have an El Nino or a La Nina.
That has a huge impact on the amount of wind shear that comes into the tropics during the hurricane season.
I talk to him. I always talk to you when I come in. I'm not.
Yeah.
Kottlowski and his team study weather maps and long-range computer forecasts to assess how the weather is going to unfold across an area roughly from the Caribbean to the coast of Africa.
When all that information is put together and each individual submits their ideas, then we kind of come up with a consensus as to what the upcoming season is going to look like. the GFS is showing a stronger ridge.
The team revises the forecast based on new information developing every day.
Well, there's too much dry air getting drawn in. See, all the clouds there's a lack of clouds. Yeah. We get sea surface temperature information every day, and some of the other variables we get every week and sometimes monthly.
Kottlowski says his ultimate job at AccuWeather is to prevent loss of life and reduce vulnerability to hurricane-related hazards. And that means getting the forecast right.
When you enter the field of meteorology, you realize that the decisions that you make on your forecast and the products that you put out may save the lives of thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, or help them to make really good decisions. So all that is in the background, but you're more concerned about getting it right, and you're trying to message what the most important part of the threat is.
Well, Dan will be back with us a little later with this season's official AccuWeather forecast. You won't want to miss it. And we'll hear from real-life hurricane hunters who fly into the eye of the storm. We'll tell you what they do and why.
There's people who've spent their entire career and not been in a Category 5 hurricane. So to have that as my first experience, it was surreal. I probably didn't sleep for 36 hours after because my adrenaline was up so high.
Well, welcome back. Will we see a repeat of last year's destructive hurricanes this season? The strongest and most devastating storm was Hurricane Ida. AccuWeather founder and CEO Joe Myers estimates Ida's damage amounted to $95 billion. Kim Leffler takes a look at some of the destruction along the storm's path.
The intensity forecasts for Ida were really good. We knew more than 2 days out that this was going to become a major hurricane.
As Ida made its way into the Gulf, hurricane expert Dan Kottlowski says AccuWeather forecasters were able to show the area most likely to see devastating impacts over eastern Louisiana days in advance.
Our determination was we took a compromise of where we thought it would go, and I think our initial forecast had this making landfall near the Texas-Louisiana border. But as we went through time, once the Ida developed fully, then it was become more obvious that Ida was going to track more on a more northerly course, which then took it more into southeast Louisiana.
A reduction of shear in the atmosphere along with very warm water caused Ida to strengthen rapidly. It increased from a Category 2 to a Category 4 storm in its final day over water. On August 29th, Ida made landfall in Port Fourchon with wind speeds of 150 miles per hour. Because of its well-defined structure, it remained a hurricane well after landfall on its path through Louisiana, destroying thousands of homes and leaving over 1 million people without power. After causing turmoil in the south, Ida headed into the northeast as a tropical rainstorm.
A couple of days before landfall, we were already talking about the fact that once it's made landfall, it would produce very heavy rainfall. The heavy rain was very brief, but very heavy.
Take a look at some of these rainfall reports here across the Commonwealth. Ephrata, 9.35 inches of rain.
The storm caused catastrophic flooding in the Northeast, with the National Weather Service issuing its first ever flash flood emergency for New York City. Dozens of people were killed. The storm system also spawned at least 7 tornadoes in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Kottlowski says the computer modeling for this storm gave the AccuWeather forecasters more confidence about its intensity.
This will not be the case with every storm. There will still be storms that will throw a curveball at us. Certainly, Ida is a good example where we had a lot of forecast information, which gave us some really good information, which allowed us to issue a really good forecast.
For AccuWeather, I'm Kim Leffler.
One of those storms we'll never forget. Kim, thank you. Stay with us. We've got much more on what to expect from this year's hurricane season after a quick break. And this year marks the 50th anniversary of Hurricane Agnes. The Category 1 storm made landfall near Panama City, Florida, and caused flooding up and down the East Coast.
Welcome back. Ida's path spanned more than 1,500 miles from Louisiana all the way up to Cape Cod. At least 10 states were inundated with more than 7 inches of rain.
Yeah, this storm was nasty. The Northeast hit especially hard as Ida was re-energized by a trough of low pressure. Central Park alone broke a 1-hour rainfall record on September 1st, measuring 3.15 inches. The storm also produced tornadoes in the tri-state area.
AccuWeather's Jillian Angeline picks up our ongoing coverage in New Jersey, where residents in the town of Mullica Hill are still in the long process of getting their lives back together.
Just wish I had my sense of security back for my family.
Some days are harder than others for Ashley Thomas, her husband Troy, and their family, survivors of the EF3 Mullica Hill, New Jersey tornado on September 1st last year.
And anytime there's like an eerie day like that, it does get a little scary.
Troy Thomas was making dinner when the tornado warning came through the phones. They knew it was time to take action. Wife Ashley, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, took their 7-year-old and 3-year-old daughters and the dog to the basement.
Our daughters have a little playhouse that sat on our back patio, and I remember just seeing it sliding across the patio and then just shooting up into the air.
Within a few seconds, I looked up and we could see the sky.
Exiting the destroyed home was no easy task.
Pipes and water and electrical wires hanging, so I said, we got to get out of here.
The family is looking ahead to better times. They're rebuilding in the same spot. And there's one feature that Thomases say they'll definitely have in this new house.
Another strong, sturdy basement with walk-up steps.
In Harrison Township, 36 homes and 2 farms were destroyed, and dozens of others were damaged. Tropical rainstorm Ida is responsible for at least 30 deaths in New Jersey alone, but she didn't stop there. AccuWeather forecasters warned about the flash flood threat in the New York City area days before it happened, and in its aftermath, they say the city suffered the most significant flash flooding disaster in its history. Subways were flooded during the event, and at least 13 people died during the flash flood emergency, many in their basement apartments.
My reaction was deep frustration, sadness, and anger.
Rebecca Morris is with the Pratt Center for Community Development, a founding member of the NYC Base Campaign, which stands for Basement Apartments Safe for Everyone.
Until people died, there wasn't much interest. We've estimated that there are between 50 to 100,000 units occupied illegally.
And it's no simple process to make them legal.
The bureaucracy and the confusion and the interaction of all these different building and zoning codes is so complicated.
Morris says government funding is necessary and agencies need to fix the codes to address the issue. She also says city infrastructure needs to be updated to handle recent climate changes. And with another hurricane season looming, Morris says time is of the essence to help basement dwellers before it's too late.
Jillian, thank you. And we want to know, will the 2022 hurricane season be as active and dangerous as last year's? We'll find out shortly what our forecasters say. One way we measure these storms is by using our AccuWeather Real Impact Scale for hurricanes. It assesses all of the impacts of an incoming storm to provide information to keep you and your property safe. Let's learn more about it from our Lincoln Riddle.
Hurricanes are dynamic. Hurricanes, or even just a tropical storm, can have a devastating impact. To better measure a storm's strength, AccuWeather developed the Real Impact Scale for hurricanes, which assesses wind speed, flooding rain, storm surge, and economic damage and loss to determine a storm's true impact.
Those factors are all weighted together and are all part of AccuWeather's Real Impact Scale for hurricanes, enabling us to really talk about a more complete picture of what the risk to life and property is in an area that's going to be impacted from a hurricane, far beyond just talking about the wind alone, which is the only thing the Saffir-Simpson scale considers.
Since the 70s, meteorologists have used the Saffir-Simpson scale to measure hurricane strength. The scale solely utilizes wind speeds to categorize hurricanes on a scale of 1 to 5. AccuWeather hurricane expert Dan Kottlowski says the Real Impact Scale was created following 2018's Hurricane Florence, which had devastating impacts despite being rated low on the Saffir-Simpson scale at landfall.
When Florence made landfall, it basically was just a borderline Cat 1, Cat 2 hurricane. It had a huge circulation, which allowed it to create a large volume volume of moisture, and that moisture turned into record flooding in the southeastern United States.
AccuWeather Real Impact Scale uses a 1 to 5 rating system and includes an additional rating of less than 1, which provides insight on hurricanes and tropical storms that don't rise to a Category 1 on the Saffir-Simpson scale.
The idea here is that people will realize that this is a much more problematic storm that, let's say, if it was a tropical storm or hurricane, Cat 1 hurricane, that even no storms can cause phenomenal flooding problems.
Kottlowski says he hopes the AccuWeather Real Impact Scale helps more people understand the severity of storms that may not receive a high Saffir-Simpson scale rating.
We're trying to get people away from just looking at the wind, looking more at the problem of water. More people die from storm surge and inland flooding than they do from wind.
Coming up next, the 2022 hurricane season forecast from our experts here at AccuWeather.
We'll tell you what to expect this season.
There will be some storms that will get into the Gulf of Mexico and will impact some parts of the Gulf coastal areas and inland areas of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and especially the Florida Panhandle. And so these areas have been hit very hard over the last 2 years, and there's no reason to believe that will not be the case this year.
And this year marks 30 years since Hurricane Andrew rocked South Florida. The destructive and deadly Category 5 storm made landfall in Elliott Key, Florida, and would go on to cause $27.3 billion in damage.
This year also marks 10 years since Hurricane Isaac wreaked havoc in the Caribbean. The Category 1 storm decimated Haiti, where 24 people lost their lives. The storm also caused widespread flooding along the U.S. Gulf Coast. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. It is time for the official AccuWeather hurricane season forecast from our expert and senior meteorologist Dan Kottlowski. For the latest information on what to expect this year, let's send it over to Lincoln Riddle.
AccuWeather hurricane experts say the 2022 hurricane season could be very active, forecasting 16 to 20 named storms in the Atlantic Basin.
Of those storms, 6 to 8 will become hurricanes, and of those hurricanes, 3 to 5 major hurricanes. And of course, we're expecting somewhere between 4 and 6 direct impacts on the United States. So this is going to be a very active season, so people have to start preparing now.
Kottlowski says an average hurricane season sees 14 named storms and 3 major hurricanes. 2 main factors play a role in how active the hurricane season will be: sea surface temperatures and vertical wind shear, the change in direction and speed of winds at increasing heights in the atmosphere. Kottlowski says sea surface temperatures are warm across the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and much of the central Atlantic. That, combined with a lingering La Niña, which typically causes less wind shear, will cause favorable conditions for tropical development.
The biggest concerns that we have right now obviously revolve around where pockets of very warm water will set up across the Gulf of Mexico and other parts of the Atlantic. Deep warm water enables storms to intensify rapidly.
While it's too early to determine exactly what parts of the United States could see tropical impacts this season, Kottlowski says the pattern looks very similar to 2020 and 2021.
Which means that there will be some storms that will get into the Gulf of Mexico and will impact some parts of the Gulf coastal areas and inland areas of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and especially the Florida Panhandle. And so these areas have been hit very hard over the last 2 years, and there's no reason to believe that will not be the case this year.
Kottlowski says storms that make landfall in the Gulf of Mexico tend to move north, raising concerns in the east.
We think that because of the fact that we are expecting a higher than normal number of storms that affect the Gulf of Mexico this year, that there probably will be at least a few storms that will bring moisture into the eastern and northeastern United States. So the flooding threat is going to be there again this year, unfortunately.
Well, remember to stay connected with us all season long on the AccuWeather Network, the AccuWeather app, and on AccuWeather.com.
Coming up, my conversation with Ken Graham, the director of the National Hurricane Center.
I think the biggest thing is you have to do something. So try to get some help. If it's too dangerous to be in an area, look up some of those resources ahead of time and take advantage of those. The biggest thing is being safe.
I recently spoke with Ken Graham, director of the National Hurricane Center, on how best to get ready now as we head into hurricane season. Prepare. That's the message Ken Graham, the director of the National Hurricane Center, has as we enter the 2022 hurricane season. The season officially starts June 1st, but the Hurricane Center considered moving the start date due to preseason storm development over the last 7 years.
We actually put a team together. We looked at it. We've got incredible data from the aircraft, from the hurricane hunters, the satellite information throughout NOAA. We're seeing more than we used to. So I think some of these storms used to occur a long time ago, and we're seeing more of these now.
2021 had an active hurricane season with 21 named storms. AccuWeather forecasters say this season could be another busy one. For those new to the coast who may be experiencing their first ever hurricane season, Graham says he recommends understanding your risk.
If you don't know what you're supposed to do, ask. There's so many resources. The emergency manager in that municipality, your parish or your county, websites, hurricanes.gov. You can go to ready.gov and find information. Listo.gov is the same information as Spanish.
Graham says while many think the timeline for getting information out about a storm is 5 or more days, the reality is there can be even less than that.
You look at how fast these storms, really can rapidly intensify. In the last 100 years, every storm that's made landfall in the United States 150 miles per hour or greater was a tropical storm or less just 3 days prior. That speaks to preparedness. We've got to have our plans ready at the beginning of the season because some of these storms, they don't care about our timelines and they get on us pretty quickly.
He says water is a big concern. Roughly 75% of fatalities associated with hurricanes and tropical storms are attributed to water. Inland flooding, storm surge, and rip currents all pose a threat.
You look at 2021, there were 130 fatalities from rip currents. I mean, you think about the danger of those. Even a storm far away, even a storm 500 miles, 1,000 miles away that will never make landfall can still push those rip currents towards the shoreline.
Graham says every storm can cause major impacts, so every storm should be taken seriously.
It really isn't about the category. It isn't about really that characteristic of the storm that we focus on so much, the center and the structure. It's about the impacts. Even there's no such thing as just a category 1. If it's going to produce 20 inches of rain, that's a big impact for anyone.
For those who may not have the financial means to evacuate or fully prepare for a storm, Graham says there are numerous resources available, no matter where you live, and says it's important to start looking into them now.
There's so many resources. There's ways to sign up for help ahead of time where you're on a list that you get some help. I think the biggest thing is you have to do something. So try to get some help.
As you get ready for hurricane season, preparing a disaster kit is recommended, including 1 gallon of water per person per day for several days, non-perishable food, and a first aid kit. To see the full list of what you should have in your disaster kit, visit AccuWeather.com/ready.
Our thanks to Ken Graham for all of that valuable information. Being prepared and staying connected are very important messages for us all to consider. And next, our Bill Waddell shows us how meteorologists at our partner station ABC 13 in Houston, Texas, work with experts here at AccuWeather's Global Weather Center to keep a close eye on the Gulf Coast.
Our primary natural disaster is flooding. We are flat and we get phenomenal rain rates around here.
The Houston Metro is home to more than 7 million people, 2 major airports, and critical fuel and chemical operations.
Harris County, which houses Houston, has been identified as the most disaster-prone county in the entire country, with a combination of the weather we get and how many people and how much infrastructure is here.
ABC 13 Chief Meteorologist Travis Herzog works with experts at AccuWeather's Global Weather Center, sharing resources and expertise with more than 125 meteorologists.
The advanced tropical outlooks. The National Hurricane Center goes only 5 days out. AccuWeather pushes the envelope and looks beyond that.
We have experts that are looking at everything from what the hurricane season is likely to produce months in advance and producing a highly accurate forecast of how many hurricanes, how many tropical storms we're expecting, and how many impacts may occur along the United States coastline.
AccuWeather Chief Meteorologist John Porter says AccuWeather's exclusive iPath and real impact scale are useful in places like Houston, where water can often cause more problems than wind,
enabling us to really talk about a more complete picture of what the risk to life and property is in an area that's going to be impacted from a hurricane, far beyond just talking about the wind alone.
You think about the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, that really only tells you about one of the 4 hurricane threats. We've got the winds, we've got the surge, the tornadoes, and the inland flooding. So to have AccuWeather say, you know what, it's actually the flooding that rises far above all the other threats.
Hurricane Nicholas knocked out power to more than 500,000 people along the Texas coast last year. Houston suffered historic flooding from Harvey in 2017. Galveston is home to the nation's worst weather disaster. The Great 1900 hurricane claimed more than 6,000 lives.
Knowing our history, knowing that what's happened before will happen again, and in a warming climate, it might be even a little bit worse than what's happened before when it comes to the floods, the droughts, the hurricane strengths.
Herzog says Houston has narrowly escaped the worst impacts of major storms in recent years. It's only a matter of time until luck runs out.
Someday we're going to get that big one again. That really is something that keeps me up at night because I know it's going to happen someday. I just don't know when.
To learn more about AccuWeather's real impact scale for hurricanes and AccuWeather's hurricane tracker, download our app or head to AccuWeather.com/hurricanes.
Coming up, simulating the storm. Why researchers at the University of Miami are attempting to recreate the impacts of a hurricane.
We want to know, like everybody else does, how strong is that storm going to be when it comes over us 3 days out or 5 days out. And the sooner we can get a good idea of what that's going to be, then we can make informed decisions about how to protect ourselves, our families, and our homes.
Welcome back. Scientists at the University of Miami are simulating the impact of a hurricane in their lab to better understand how air and water affect the strength of a storm. Kim Leffler has more.
We're getting that wind tunnel next.
In the days before a storm makes landfall, knowing what the impacts may be is critical for those in its path. That's why researchers at the University of Miami are using this simulator to better understand the role air and water play as a hurricane strengthens.
Getting the intensity forecast right requires understanding these transfers of heat and energy between the two.
At the Surge Structure Atmosphere Interaction Laboratory, or SUSTAIN, researchers can simulate the impact of a hurricane, from minor waves to those created by Category 5 winds over 157 miles per hour. The facility has been around for almost 8 years.
We've done a lot of work on the coupling, the friction between the atmosphere and ocean, how much energy the atmosphere loses to the waves. And that work has resulted in a different expression being used in the current generation of forecast models for what really happens in an intense storm.
At the lab, they've also been studying rapid intensification, when a storm strengthens by at least 35 miles per hour in a 24-hour period. It's something we've been seeing more often, with 6 of the 7 hurricanes in 2021 undergoing rapid intensification. One component the scientists here are focused on is the role sea spray plays as a hurricane forms.
When the wind blows an intense hurricane, there's a tremendous amount of water getting up into the air. And it depends on the size of it, whether it gets evaporated, moved up high into the storm to help power it, or whether it falls back in and ends up having a different effect. And understanding that requires really good measurements of the spray, and they're difficult to make because there's so much of it and it's moving fast.
It's a topic that's personal for the researchers who live and work in Miami, an area no stranger to major storms.
We want to know, like everybody else does, how strong is that storm going to be when it comes over us 3 days out or 5 days out. And the sooner we can get a good idea of what that's going to be, then we can make informed decisions about how to protect ourselves, our families, and our homes.
And those are important decisions to make. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to meet the pilots who fly directly into the eye of a hurricane. What they learned to help keep you safe.
It's very intense. You know, there's definitely some scary moments, but you're so focused in the moment that you kind of reflect on it later, and then it's more of the, wow, that was quite the experience.
Welcome back to our look at the 2022 hurricane season. Have you ever wondered what it's like to fly a plane into a hurricane? Each year, the National Weather Service holds a hurricane awareness tour where you can meet the real-life hurricane hunters who fly into the eye of these storms. We sent our Jill and Angeline to meet them and learn more.
It's very intense. You know, there's definitely some scary moments, but you're so focused in the moment that you kind of reflect on it later, and then it's more of the, wow, that was quite the experience.
Lieutenant Nate Wardell has his first hurricane season under his belt, flying the WC-130J Super Hercules. Many people evacuate ahead of an approaching storm, while the hurricane hunters, as they are known, head directly into the storm to gather data to improve life-saving forecasts. Wardell describes flying right into the eye.
It goes from this total chaos and fighting everything in the plane to just clear, and it just opens up and you can see the sky. We did it at night, and I remember we couldn't see anything because of the clouds, and we came through and you looked up and it was the moon and just a million stars.
Pilots navigate very carefully through the hurricane's strong winds. They have to almost fly sideways. It's called crabbing. And during these turbulent flights, which they say feel like a roller coaster, the team on board is busy doing their jobs, like Lieutenant Colonel Kimberly Spusta, a flight meteorologist.
There's people who've spent their entire career and not been in a Category 5 hurricane. So to have that as my first experience, it was surreal. I probably didn't sleep for 36 hours after because my adrenaline was up so high.
Spusta has guided pilots directly into about 75 hurricane eye walls.
I'm also asking the dropson operator to drop the dropson into the storm.
Drop windsons, or dropsons for short, are small tubes that help measure features like temperature, dew point, relative humidity, and wind direction as they parachute down towards the ocean. The crew members here in this Hercules take the dropsons and put it in this tube right here. Then they drop it. They usually send about 20 to 25 dropsons out into the atmosphere during each flight.
Not just one, but the collective data from all of these aircraft improve the track accuracy by 10 to 15%, and the intensity, or how strong the hurricane is, the accuracy of the strength by 15 to 20%.
That may not sound like much, but the National Hurricane Center's Deputy Director Jamie Rome says that helps improve forecast accuracy, saving lives and helping communities in and around the storm's path.
These communities that we've pulled out of the warning no longer have to spend costly dollars to shutter their community, to shutter their economy, and to evacuate citizens unnecessarily.
Rome says forecasters have only seconds at times to make big decisions about hurricane warnings. For AccuWeather, I'm Jillian Angeline.
How cool is that job?
That is just incredible and brave what they do. I've always found it fascinating. I would love to do it, but you just became a pilot yourself.
I did. I am not ready to fly into a hurricane just yet, but if you want to go, we can go on a sunny day. How's that?
All right. Oh, take me up. I would love to go.
All right, perfect. We'll go. All right. Well, this year marks the anniversary of some of the deadliest hurricanes to make landfall in the U.S.
Monica Danielle talked to experts here at AccuWeather about these deadly and damaging storms.
In June of 1972, Hurricane Agnes lingered over the mid-Atlantic and dumped a tremendous amount of rain.
There were some tornadoes associated with Agnes in Florida, and they did take some lives. It caused some damage down there. But Agnes's major legacy was from flooding.
The storm sent more than 30 feet of water pouring into Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. The hurricane caused 128 deaths.
At the time, it was dubbed the greatest natural disaster in terms of dollar value damage from a weather system.
Hurricane Andrew ripped into Florida in August of 1992, one of only 4 hurricanes to make landfall in the U.S. as a Cat 5.
We thought it would at least be a Cat 2, Cat 3. We never dreamed it would be a Cat 5 making landfall just 3 days out. I don't think anyone was prepared for a Cat 5 hurricane to hit just south of Miami. It was almost like a buzzsaw. It was almost like a large tornado causing just tremendous wind damage.
In Florida, Andrew killed 44 people and left a record $25 billion in damage.
Sandy was a huge hurricane. It was over 1,100 miles in diameter, the largest hurricane ever recorded, at least in history, to hit the United States like this.
It's been 10 years since Hurricane Sandy made landfall in New Jersey on October 30th.
The important thing to remember about Sandy is the fact that it made a left turn into New Jersey, something very, very unusual.
A storm surge of more than 15 feet was recorded. Seawater poured into city streets and flooded subway tunnels in lower Manhattan. 147 people were killed and millions were left without power for days. Hurricane Harvey made landfall in Texas as a Category 4 hurricane.
If you were to characterize Harvey, it was a phenomenal rain producer, producing rainfall amounts of over 50 inches.
Harvey stalled over southern Texas, dumping a year of rain in less than a week on Houston. Catastrophic flooding led to thousands of rescues and more than 100 deaths. With more than $125 billion in damage, it is the second most costly hurricane to hit the U.S. behind Katrina.
Harvey will go down in history as one of the most devastating hurricanes from the standpoint of water.
Monica, thank you. Now, this is an important question. Are you and your family prepared if a hurricane heads your way?
You want to protect your belongings, your house, your cars from projectiles, things flying around. So it's very important to secure lawn, furniture, anything that's big enough to move and cause some damage.
Stay tuned for what you need to know.
What would you do if a hurricane was headed for your home? How would you prepare?
AccuWeather's Emmy Victor takes a look at what you need to know to keep your home and family safe.
The power of a hurricane can cause substantial damage to your homes. Improve the ability to withstand hurricanes by acting on these tips.
You want to protect your belongings, your house, your cars from projectiles, things flying around. So it's very important to secure lawn, furniture, anything that's big enough to move and cause some damage.
To protect your property from wind and rain damage, start by taking care of your home on the outside. Inspect your roof for any holes or cracks. Clear your gutters to keep water flowing away from your home. And trim your trees to minimize cleanup after the storm. When you get inside, prepare for flooding and power outages.
Checking any kind of water mitigation or water transfer, your sump pumps, your battery backups for those sump pumps, home generators.
It's more important than ever to prepare early for hurricane season. Supply chain disruptions may make emergency supplies harder to find.
Especially for some of the bigger items like generators and other lithium power packs and things that from the unit perspective, stores won't have as many of.
As you gather supplies for your family, don't forget about your pets.
So it would be a good thing to prepare and maybe a little hurricane kit that includes basics like food, water.
If you do have to evacuate, don't leave your pet behind. Identify shelters and hotels that are pet friendly and bring a copy of their medical records.
Wherever you show up, they may ask for it. And we don't know what the internet situation is going to be. A lot of records are online now.
With these steps, you and your family will be prepared all hurricane season long.
That is all very important information. And before we leave you, we wanted to show you some of the names you're going to see in the Atlantic this year. 21 letters of the English alphabet are represented.
Ida from last year's list has been retired and will never again be used to name a storm. The Category 4 hurricane killed dozens last year and caused catastrophic damage in its path from Louisiana through Cape Cod. Stay connected to the AccuWeather Network during hurricane season and every day to get up-to-the-minute expert forecasts.
And to learn more about AccuWeather's exclusive real impact scale for hurricanes and Hurricane Tracker, download our app or head to AccuWeather.com/hurricanes. We appreciate you watching. I'm Adam Del Rosso.
And I'm Michelle Rotella. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out these other videos here and be sure to subscribe for new content and the latest weather news from AccuWeather.